In this episode of Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast, we continue to discuss the signs of the economy collapsing, the government watered down the procurement legislation, and is the Minister of National Security a flagrant liar? Welcome back, folks, to Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast. This is episode number 22. What a week we've had, and what a week I have had, folks. It's been a busy social week for me, a busy news week as well. But before we get into all the wonderful details of the major weekend events, first allow me, for the benefit of our new listeners, and a special welcome to our new listeners as well, allow me to say that this podcast is available on YouTube, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Twitter, and for the benefits of our international friends, you guys can check us out especially on Spotify. So, let's get into it. So, talking about all the major events of the weekend. This weekend, I had the honor to attend my friend wedding ceremony. That is Corey Shepard. And of course, you guys can check out Corey on the Corey Shepard podcast. He's listed on the same platforms that this podcast can be found as well. So I want to take this opportunity to wish Corey and his lovely wife Stacey well wishes as you both embark on this next chapter in life. The wedding ceremony was amazing. I mean, I mean, the ceremony was so amazing that even Corey forgot which candle you need to light first. You know, when you have like two candles becomes one Corey. You light the two candles first, and then you light the unity candle. This man light the unity candle first, yes. And only he light the unity candle first. The priest come over one time. The whole church recognized this man light the wrong candle. It was amazing, amazing stuff. But then over to the reception, and you could not have asked for a better reception. Of course, Corey cried, but hey, it's okay for some men to cry. I mean, but like I said, beautiful reception. So, again, let me thank Corey for letting me share this special day, being invited to this wedding ceremony. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we wish both you guys all the happiness in the world. I mean, this world needs to have more good people like Corey and Stacy. And if that be the case, I think heaven on earth. So, in saying that, cheers to my friend Corey. So, as we move on the whole topic of congratulations, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate Ms. Kamala Prasad Bissessar on being re-elected as political leader of the United National Congress. Now, I don't have a final vote tally, but I think she got something like 14,000 votes versus Vasan Bharat, who got 2,000 votes. As I've said before, Vasan Bharat had as much chance as beating the incumbent as a snowball in hell, as the West Indies beating Australia in a Test match series. That's as much chance. As the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, that's how much chance this Vasan Bharat had in beating Kamala Prasad. It was a wrong call. Sadly, those that were spearheading his campaign and giving him false hopes, such as that CNC3 network, I'm pretty sure they will be eating humble pie by now. When the membership of the UNC has had enough of Kamala, I am sure she will meet the same fate as the previous leader, Mr. Pandey. And on the topic of politics, interestingly enough, I've seen Philip Edward Alexander, former leader of some party, the PP party, People Empowerment Party. He is now saying or pledging to work with Kamala in doing all that he can to get rid of this government. Wow, how things have changed so dramatically. I mean, I honestly, when it comes to Philip Edward Alexander, when he first came to the forefront, this was when I think he became popular, and I honestly felt that the guy was making sense on some of the issues that he spoke. And I felt he had a common sense approach to what he was saying. But somewhere along the lines, I think Philip got lost. He got carried away with his entire popularity, and some of his thinking became so liberal that I think it was too liberal, too far-fetched, too left for my taste, you know. He started a style of using the hammer approach to everything. He just want to mash everything up. And I think he lost sight of the approach of the iron fist and the velvet glove approach, you know. Something more appetizing to our culture in Trinidad. You know, it's much more it's much it's easier when you soften the blow. But nonetheless, party politics goes on, and right now I feel what the people want is some stability, especially in this scenario where the economy is collapsing by the day, and all this bogus 19 all this bogus COVID-19 restrictions and hysteria enabled by a media who has no knowledge on what they're reporting. You know, it's people just need some stability, and I think Kamala benefited in part a lot from that. But like I said, it was an issue for the membership, and the membership decided so. Good luck to Mrs. Prasad Bisasa and continuing to lead the party. And speaking about the economy collapsing, I read this interesting article from Anthony Wilson, who's now at the Express newspapers, and he wrote an article headline: "Why is government raising money privately?" So, in reviewing his article and reading this article, apparently between July 2018 and June 2020, central government and state enterprises they have raised some 30.5 billion on the local and international bond market. But what is striking about this, according to Anthony Wilson, and from what I've read in his article, he's saying that based on his research, of that $30.5 billion that was raised on those markets, 37 of the bonds offerings were done through private primary placement on the domestic bond market. One was on the international offer, and just three were considered public. Now, the public offering being the National Investment Fund, which most of us would know who followed the whole investment scenario. But the value of the public offering that was on the public fund, that whole NIF, was $4 billion. So basically, what this is showing is that for the period July 2018 to July 2020, 87% of the money raised by central government and state enterprises came from the private primary placement of the domestic market. That is astonishing. Just 13% came from public bond issue. Now, in my mind, well, the argument I guess was being made is that, according to Anthony Wilson's article, is that the whole scenario for using the private primary placement allows for expediency and speed. That's what some brilliant friend of Anthony Wilson is alluding to as to why they continue to use the private primary placement, and that is deemed as the favored option. I don't buy that. I think that's BS actually. Really, really. I mean, who really buys that argument? I mean, could it be that this option is favored, stated in the article, by the Minister of Finance, because the information pertaining to how these RFPs are drafted and how they are done are kept secret, where the Ministry of Finance can cherry pick, you know, whoever they want to have and whoever they want to give an account to, and not give the public or the taxpayer accountant who to pick for these public for who these private placements. No, it can't be that. Of course, it can't be that. I mean, what about, is it that, as Mr. Wilson stated in his article as well, and alluded to in a press conference held on, when was it held? Held on October 29th, that the Minister of Finance revealed that NCB Global Finance, whose CEO is Angus Young, the brother of National Security Minister Stuart Young, was successful in receiving mandates to raise 2.6 billion of the whole 70.8 billion issued by central government and state enterprises between September 2015 and 2020. Could it be that they don't want to tell you all, or they don't want to tell us, sorry, how that money was raised? Is it because it's a whole lack of transparency in the whole bond issue that provides the whole central government and the state enterprises with the perfect opportunity to continue doing what they're doing without any oversight. I wonder, could it be that? I mean, Mr. Wilson also made a point, which I agree with, by the way, that the government knows and it knows its projected budget deficits way in advance. For example, in 2021, they project to be 8.2 billion or about $2 billion per quarter. So how come they can't plan in advance to issue public offering when there is an appetite for public offering in any local domestic market? It's interesting that they would choose to continue with these private placements. I mean, don't they have the skills to plan ahead? Nah, it has to be speed. It has to be expedience, right, folks? You see, they think we're stupid. That's what it's all about. But staying on the economy, remember when I mentioned that foreign currency in Trinidad and Tobago was drying up faster than a glass of water in the Sahara Desert? Well, here comes some more proof. PriceMart Management announced to its shoppers that its regular sourcing and merchandising of goods, or for imported goods that is, may be affected due to the foreign currency becoming less available. That's PriceMart. Now, PriceMart imports a lot of its merchandise from its warehouses and its international suppliers. So, regardless of how much TT dollars PriceMart may have, these suppliers are not interested in TT currency. TT currency, no, they want US currency for the supply of their goods. TT means something only in Trinidad. Nowhere else is it of value. Hard currency is what matters in the world. Hard currency is what matters in international trade. And if PriceMart cannot return, value to shareholders at the end of the year, you know, let's just say for 2, 3 years they can't return some sort of profitability, um, then I don't think they have any problems with packing up and leaving Trinidad and Tobago and kicking unemployment even further down the road. You see, the parent company of the parent company of multinational, they can't remit TT currencies to their foreign bank accounts. It means nothing to their foreign bank accounts. It means nothing to their foreign bankers. And as I recall, PriceMart uses hundreds of millions of US dollars for the year. I mean, Jawala Ramaran made that announcement when he declared the major users of foreign currency. And I think I listed the players on a previous episode of in this podcast about the major users of foreign currency. And PriceMart was pretty high up on the list. Yeah. So, but I think I suspect this whole public call for USD and this whole public call alerting the public that, lack of foreign currency is affecting their merchandise. I think this is a tap on the government risk, alerting them that there's a need to release more foreign currency so that they can operate freely. And I suspect that if it's not addressed, then PriceMart may very well want to take this entire issue up a bit. And when I say up a bit, I suspect they may very well want to close one of its locations if they are unable to supply all the stores adequately. Already, I'm sure you guys have seen increases in prices on some of its items, and I suspect this is given that the fact that the foreign currency becomes more expensive for them, the US dollar, so that they can source merchandise out here, and that translates in those increase in prices to the final consumer. People go to PriceMart in part, in my mind, to get the entire international experience and benefit from bulk buying. But if you can't do that, then bulk buying makes some sort of sense in terms of your savings. But if you can't do that, then what's the point of going to PriceMart? You might as well just go to your local supermarket and wherever you live and continue. People survived before PriceMart, don't get me wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, there wasn't bulk buying per se, but just that PriceMart facilitated something different in the entire culture of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But what is scary is that if they do pack up and they do decide to close some shops down or whatever because they can't adequately stock them, is the unemployment that they're going to leave because they do create a lot of jobs. But that is just one scary aspect or another scary point that is showing that the economy is not doing as well as they say it is. But perhaps one of the major or the biggest news item to hit the economy relates to the news that Train 1 of Atlantic LNG may be shutting down. Yeah, now I said maybe shutting down, and I get to that. The Trinidad Guardian newspapers reported that the government was in a desperate attempt, along with the national gas company NGC, to save Atlantic LNG Train run from being shut down come January. You can well imagine what would happen if Train 1 would have to be mothballed and taken out of service. I mean, think about the possibility of the loss of jobs and the significant loss of earnings for the government. That is crucial because we are already in a position where we're running um, deficit budgets. Added to that is the fact that the standard of living of not just the staff but the families that have someone employed at Change Run will be significantly affected. Now you remember Change Run, if ever this is mothballed, that comes on the heels of this whole entire um, Petrotrin when it was shut down. Thousands of people were sent home. So the energy industry is already feeling the pinch in that regard. Now, Train 1, how is it currently made up? 46% is owned by Shell, 34% is owned by BP, and the Chinese Investment Corporation owns 10%, and the National Gas Company owns another 10%. So that's how the whole shareholders of Train 1 is made up. This entire scenario, Train 1, it's all about the availability of gas, folks. The government had met with BP at some point in time in an attempt to convince BP to supply or to continue to supply gas to Train 1. But apparently, BP has informed the government that it will be able to meet its contractual obligations for Trains 2, 3, and 4, but not for Train 1. You see, the problem with BP, TT, and Royal Dutch Shell as it relates to Train 1 is that in addition to providing gas to a train, 1, it also requires a multi-million dollar turnaround to extend the entire operational life of Train 1. And that multi-million dollar turnover, that funding, the shareholders, they don't seem willing to put up, especially given the gas price that they will now have to pay to NGC for the continued operation of Train 1. Now, remember I mentioned supposedly shut down? So here comes NGC to the rescue to take a lead role in Train 1. The same NGC that recently recorded close to over $300 million loss for 2020. The same NGC whose chairman, Mr. Conrad NL, and chartered accountants have said that how the company is now undergoing cash management issues. So apparently, when the Guardian newspaper they contacted the energy minister, that's Minister Franklin Khan, for comment on this entire scenario, indicating that the information comes from reliable sources. Hear what the hear what Franklin Khan responded. Well, right. Continue to contact your reliable sources. That's all I have to say. I really feel I don't understand how the Minister Khan can respond to people like this. I think politicians in Trinidad and Tobago, I think they're losing their minds now. I mean, the minister must understand that he has an obligation to be honest with the population. Really, I really think that response that he gave the news reporter is just so disrespectful. Just entirely disrespectful. So later on, Minister Franklin Khan came out and he denied this entire newspaper report that Atlantic LNG Train 1 was going to shut down next month. Right? He said it's not going to happen. And he said this while responding to a question from the opposition chief whip, Mr. David Lee, who had asked him to comment on his whole attempt by the government and the National Gas Company to save Train 1 from being shut down in January. This is what the minister said in Parliament. Madam Speaker, Atlantic Train 1 will not be shut down in January 2021. Train 1 will continue to operate in 2021 and will be part of a wider negotiations which have been taking place among Atlantic LNG shareholders to form one unitized facility encompassing all 4 trains. That's what he mentioned to Parliament. What Minister Khan did say is that NGC, acting on behalf of the government, has taken requisite action to maintain the operation of Train 1 pending the finalization of negotiations on the structured facility with all trains. Now, when the minister was asked by Minister Lee whether the shareholders had agreed to supply gas, the minister did admit that how such negotiations are continuing to take place on the source and continued supply of gas for Train 1. He said that, well, Train 1 was normally supplied 100% gas by BP, but BP has since said that out they have a shortage of natural gas and it would not be able to supply Train 1. As you all would recall, BPTT is undergoing some scaling back in employment in Trinidad and Tobago, so things are a bit difficult for them at this point in time. Now, here is where the fan starts to get messy. It is now being reported that by the Guardian newspapers that the state-owned National Gas Company has taken responsibility for the operations of Atlantic Energy Train 1, including, I think the National Gas Company is going to spend the funding required for the turnaround and to find gas to run the plant. Now, this is a major gamble, and it has been suggested so by many industry insiders, although they have not used as much media that I have. But still, a major gamble. This gamble, in my mind, is likely to lead to bad outcomes for the National Gas Company and for taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I'm no energy expert here, and I would like to defer to people like former Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine. But if a multinational like BP, TT, and Shell is bailing out on Train 1, then I become a bit skeptical, you know? I mean, these are the guys and these are the players in the international market, and if they jump in ship, I start to question this whole entire deal as well. I mean, what are they seeing that we are not seeing, or what did they tell the government that is not being told to us? This entire scenario brings back bad memories for me. This reminds me of the World GTL fiasco in the making, where government is about to pump taxpayers' money into a business deal that has a return on investment of zero. Now remember that whole GTL deal that left Petrotrin, um, issuing bonds for the tune of billions of dollars, and in the final analysis, the entire deal fell through because the whole gas to I can't remember what's gas to liquefied, natural gas, trying to liquefy or something to that effect. It collapsed. Whatever the deal was, it collapsed, and it left Petrotrin holding a bag with a huge hole and a gas plant that basically became scrap iron, if not being sold for $30 something million to some next company, I believe. So, New Iron, I believe they sold it for. So when they're talking about doing these types of deal, I get very concerned about it. I mean, sources have said that the NGC decision was to fulfill a mandate from the government that the plant must not be shut down. This is what the Guardian has reported via their sources, and they're saying the plant must not be shut down because it would be a major embarrassment to the Keith Rowley administration, which had boasted about the continuation of Train 1 and leaving more money in state hands or whatever. Now, if decisions are being made because of the fact that, you know, the politician boasted about something and that's why they intend to keep this plant open, just to facilitate a narrative, I mean, we are in some serious trouble. You see, without this whole NGC move, this much touted Train 1, if NGC doesn't step in, it won't last very long. You see, for Train 1 to even operate, it's reported according to the Guardian that it would require no less than 250 million standard cubic feet of gas per day. Otherwise, some compressors in the plant will not kick in. Now, the Guardian also went on to say that it has gotten a copy of some confidential BPTT document showing that not only has BPTT not allocated any gas for Train 1, it is expecting a catastrophic fall in its production. So, which means even what they currently have right now, they're not going to be producing that much again. The document apparently shows that the company is expecting an average of 1.371 billion standard cubic feet of natural gas per day. But compare this year when the company was producing over 2 billion standard cubic feet of gas per day. Significant decline, over 25%. So, former Energy Minister Kevin Ramnaran reminded that BPT does not have enough gas to supply Train 1. And this is what he said. Train 1 has a minimum rate at which it can run at 250 million cubic feet, as mentioned in The Guardian. So that's confirmed right here. So even if the turnaround happens, that means even if NGC spends their money, the former minister is saying that Train 1 will be kept in operation mode for 2020, 2021, for 2021, 2022. Then where does the gas come from? If NGC sources natural gas, it will mean that they will have to shift supply away from some of the currently operating Point Lisa's plant to Train 1. But more than that, what is interesting to know is that if the gas previously allocated to some downstream companies that have since been mothballed for lower prices, if they were to move that gas, then what happens if these plants, these methanol plants and ammonia plants, want to be restarted? There'll be no gas for them to continue operation because all the gas would have been shifted to Train 1. Interesting times ahead, folks, because I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it. Because there is no way there's going to be enough gas to operate Train 1s and to bring mothball plants back up and running when or if the time allows for it to happen. So let's move away from this whole idea about the economy and all that stuff, because Train 1 being mothballed is not good news for us if it does happen. And the alternative in terms of that gamble that they plan to make, still not a good alternative in my opinion. But let's move away. Let's focus on this whole. Remember when I spoke about some time ago about the Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith and his star boy ECP Hackshaw, who he suspended but he never wanted to suspend? Well, the whole issue is back in the limelight again, as it relates to the internal investigation into ECP Hackshaw, who the Police Complaints Authority apparently said that he has questions to answer relating to his moonlighting activities. Well, guess what? Just like the largest tuna getting off the hook, you guessed it, Hackshaw is off the hook as well. You see, Hackshaw is about to retire, so the police cannot complete the investigation into him before he retires. So apparently he gets away. This is how the police service operates, And the Commissioner of Police said the matter could not progress as planned since because Hackshaw was away from office, they were unable to continue the investigation. The Commissioner of Police was asked if he was concerned that the handling of the matter could be construed as a cover-up. This Commissioner of Police, this brazen-faced Commissioner of Police said, no. He said when the PCA submitted a report on the internal matter, he immediately ordered an investigation and he suspended him. But as always, this idiot Commissioner of Police forgot that in July he said he could not initiate disciplinary actions against Hackshaw because he was the second highest ranking officer and he, Griffith that is, could not act as jury, judge, and executioner. You see, the idiot changes his mind so often, that he forgot that he appointed acting Deputy Commissioner of Police, Anthony James, to hear the matter. He forgot to change his mind, that is, he appointed Anthony James to hear the matter. You see, in my mind, this warrants a full-fledged investigation as to the Commissioner's role in what is possibly a planned cover-up for a senior officer. A planned cover-up from the beginning. You see, it doesn't go well for trust in the police service. And again, we see different standards being applied as it relates to police officers and the public at large. You can retire at any point in time and not have an investigation into you continuing. This is insane. But the nature of the police service, I guess. Let's talk about the Minister of National Security, since we're in the whole issue of police and all that stuff. This Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, this guy is a flagrant liar. If ever there was a politician that engages in such activity, this one is it. He has little respect for the institutions that form our democracy, including courts and parliament. But I'll explain as I go along why I say this about this Minister of National Security. Most recently, the Law Association has taken issue with his message, with his statements on court proceedings as it relates to illegal Venezuelans entering Trinidad and Tobago. You see, it turns out Stuart Little held a press conference in which he questioned the role played by lawyers in the court proceedings which seek to prevent the deportation of Venezuelan migrants. As far as I know, everyone is entitled to their day in court. Lawyers, they have a duty to represent their clients fearlessly in order to ensure the law is followed and that the state is held to account for its actions. The Law Association said it was concerned by the criticism of the court for not applying the law but for applying the policy that it wants. And, you know, it's dangerous when you have a politician, a national security minister, using these public forums to criticize the courts. But more on Stuart Young as we proceed along this podcast, because I have particular topics that I want to bring up to prove why I call Stuart Young a flagrant liar. But as it relates to the Prime Minister and this whole Venezuelan deportation issue, you see, the Prime Minister has denied that some letter he apparently received from Nicolas Maduro has to deal with deportation of children. Apparently, he's saying that the letter has to deal with how the Venezuelans are being treated by U.S. officials as it relates to the Venezuelan authority to spend its own money and conduct its own business. The Prime Minister said that the government of Trinidad and Tobago could not afford to take the position that children will not be deported. And he went on to talk about how if he says that how children will not be deported, then you can very well expect a whole mass migration of people to Trinidad and Tobago. And I honestly, I think on this issue, the Prime Minister is right. Because if you throw your hands up and say that you will not be deporting people, do you know the amount of people that's going to show up on the shores of Trinidad and Tobago? Having said that, I have placed on public record my position as it relates to this whole immigration of Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago and the whole issue of survival for them and what's going on with them in Venezuela. So I think the Prime Minister has found himself between a rock and a hard place, but I also think that something has to be done in terms of compassion for how we treat with these people. Like I said, it's survival, and I know fully well that even though it's survival, Trinidad and Tobago cannot afford all of these people coming to our shores, but it's just an entire sad and messy situation. Now, the Prime Minister went on to say how Venezuelan immigrants can't have more right as it relates to locals. He said that our borders is closed, but he is saying that our borders is closed, but he's allowing, other dignitaries like, Delcy Rodriguez to land in Trinidad and Tobago while the borders is closed, and he's entertaining them. You see, is it double standard that creates the problem? What we have to be careful for is allowing politicians to say one thing and then practice something entirely different. And this whole Venezuelan issue just reeks of double standards. Now here we have this next leftist guy, this movement for social justice guy, David Abdullah, who is telling the ambassador of the United States to remain quiet, to hush your mouth. He's saying that the United States has no authority to comment on how Venezuelans, with the Venezuelan migration issue to Trinidad and Tobago. According to him, Abdullah, that is, it is well known that the administration which he represents, the Donald Trump administration, was separating children from their parents who came in together at the US Mexico border. Some of them were even kept in cages. This is what. Now, I don't want to entertain David Abdullah because, as far as I can see, he's some sort of socialist guy who doesn't understand the entire operations of our economy. He doesn't understand the principles of socialism because he just wants to be in the known. He just wants to say what he thinks sounds good. We're not understanding the implications of in-depth research into what he's talking about. He is he's probably my newest member to the fake news listing, David Abdullah, for not understanding what he's talking about and for just talking at the top of his head. Just repeating things from, I mean, Nicolas Maduro, that's your hero, Mr. Abdullah? Really? I don't understand that. So, another issue I want to talk about right now is the PNM, or the Prime Minister, sorry, defending his comment of rich getting richer. Now, honestly, I have no problem with that statement because the rich getting richer, that's the only way jobs are created. Now, the manner in which they get rich is another issue in terms of they get rich via corruption or whatnot. But if you don't allow rich people to not just to get richer, but to invest money, to create jobs, to open plants and factories, and how is the economy going to turn over? Who else is going to do it? Government does not have the answers in terms of providing jobs for the entire economy. They can't do it alone. They need private capital. They need private citizen entrepreneurs to invest money and to create jobs. I think when the Prime Minister made his statement, he probably was a little bit misconstrued, or he wasn't probably directly, or he explained it sufficiently well enough. But in terms of the general statement, I don't think it's really problematic per se, because the private sector is what is needed to drive the economy, and that should be the biggest sector, not the government. I think what the issue that people have, like I mentioned before, is that he's alluding to the fact that some people getting richer at the expense of others, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It could be a situation where everyone benefits from this entire process, but I guess the lack of transparency and all of that stuff in terms of how contracts are awarded leads to these sorts of misconceptions in terms of how people earn their money and that kind of thing. But I don't know. The Prime Minister said thin skinned people, things like this, but I think people have valid concerns in terms of how um, government spends taxpayers' dollars. So let's just see what goes on. Now, the opposition leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, is talking about the public procurement. She said, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Amendment Bill 2020, which was debated and passed in the House of Representatives on Friday. The bill amends the Public Procurement and the Disposal of Public Property Act 2015, which was only partially proclaimed and lacks all of its regulations. You see, for the last 5 years, there has been no attempt by this government to make any moves to operationalize this whole public procurement legislation. Now, the government is coming for a third time to try and water down the act while failing to bring any of the required regulations to get the act operationalized. You see, according to the opposition leader, the government is attempting to move away all powers, all real powers that the legislation brings with it, leaving it without any bite at curbing corruption. You see, what the government is coming with its bill is to amend the act to remove from the procurement regulators scrutiny as it relates to legal, financial, accounting, auditing, and medical services, and any other services that the minister may order or determine subject to parliament negative resolutions, or subject to parliament resolution, that is. It's interesting that they would pick out medical services. I don't understand why they would want to remove the procurement regulator from medical services, but the entire list is just a strange list. But the finance minister, that's Mr. Colum Imbert, he came back and said that internationally it is well known and best practice for some procurement regulators is not involved in certain activities. But I trying to think about medical services, which procurement regulator is not involved in that? See, it's their language that how they come across. The finance minister said all of a sudden everyone and their nana were experts in the fields, but failed to do basic research. And I keep saying I hope everyone is listening to these politicians' language as they deal with issues when it relates to people attempt to ask questions and to get information on how public business is being dealt with. But I hope when this bill is brought before the Senate that the because it's already passed in the House of Representatives, so it now has to go before the Senate for approval. And I hope the 9 independent senators really act independent and join with opposition, because I suppose the opposition will not support the bill in the Senate either, and not support these amendments to the bill because these amendments basically water down the bill. But as I've mentioned before, how independent senators when they are appointed by a president who is in fact appointed by the same government in power. I just don't think that they are that independent. And the opposition leader alluded to the fact that the removal of medical services is probably because Faris Alwari, the Attorney General, has some sort of interest in medical services because he did recuse himself from 2 cabinet meetings that dealt with medical services. I'm not quite sure what that is about. But another, a couple other institutions that doesn't support the amendment is this Joint Consultative Council and the Construction Industry and Transparency Institute. I believe that these two groups need to change their names to the Sheep Herders Association because you don't hear anything about them on major issues. They are just silent on everything issues. So they just need to they serve no real purpose as it comes to accountability and integrity. Major issues that they should be putting their points forward, they don't. So I don't understand what is they coming forward now. As I've mentioned before, this whole issue as it relates to the Minister of National Security, and I think he's a flagrant liar. I want to go back on that issue now and deal with why I made those statements. Because you see, in May 2015, the former People's Partnership government, they ordered 12 vessels from Deman, a company called Deman, for $1.35 billion. Now, remember, I mentioned Stuart Young, as I said, is a flagrant liar. Well, the proof is in the research, and the Trinidad Express newspapers has done a great piece on reporting here as it relates to these entire vessels. You see, the whole expose as it relates to the engineers from Deman Shipyard not wanting to travel to Trinidad and Tobago to perform maintenance work on Coast Guard vessels. Well, as it turns out, the engineers have been in Trinidad and Tobago, well, in Trinidad specifically, since October of this year, contrary to what the Security Minister, Stuart Young, has said. He has claimed that how the engineers from Deman Shipyard refused to travel to Trinidad because of COVID-19 virus. Now, the ambassador for the Kingdom of Netherlands to Trinidad and Tobago has confirmed that an engineer flew in Trinidad in October and was replaced by another one in November. So, when asked to respond to this, Minister Young said on Tuesday, I want to get this quote for you guys. He said, the truth remains that due to the global COVID-19 pandemic, Deman delayed what was required and they still have not supplied the parts required to maintain the vessels. In fact, he said, Demons have not shipped the parts to Trinidad and Tobago as yet. But that's what he said. That's his response to this whole entire issue as it relates to his statement in which he said in Parliament that he would seek a meeting with the Netherlands ambassador because personnel from Deman Shipyard in Holland do not want to fly to Trinidad to repair Coast Guard vessels that are down. Now, as I mentioned before, the ambassador to the Netherlands has said that as far as he's concerned, that how engineers have traveled to Trinidad, which is true. You see, Minister Young's response stating that there was a delay with respect to the arrival of engineers and also with the supplying of parts. At no point in time did he say that out or indicate that there were engineers in Trinidad. He blatantly attempted to mislead not just the Parliament but the public of Trinidad and Tobago. And all this issue about parts and you know delivery has no bearings on what he said in Parliament because that's another issue. That's another question that no one is interested about. He said that the engineers weren't in Trinidad. The ambassador said that they were here. Now, I don't understand how he could not know that the engineers were in Trinidad, since he was the one, or he's the only one empowered to grant exemptions for people to enter Trinidad and Tobago, given this entire restrictions as relates to COVID-19. So how could he not know that the engineers were here? He had to have known. I think he's deliberately attempting to tell untruths again. And I say again, I'll tell you why I say again. In the meantime, MP for Salman Barataria, I believe it was, Saddam Hussein, and I totally agree with him saying that how the Minister of National Security deceived the Parliament, as I mentioned before, by telling citizens that the engineers from Netherlands were free to travel to Trinidad due to COVID-19 fears. And the Minister of National Security, according to Saddam Hussein, owes the people of this country an apology, and the engineers an apology. But more than that, I think something has to be done as it relates to this Minister of National Security and his unwillingness to tell the truth. You see, apart from being incompetent, Stuart Little is now showing a propensity to cover his failures with lies. The Minister of National Security, obviously, he denied misleading the Parliament regarding the arrival of engineers and a repair crew. But from all that we have seen, it's nothing new. You see, in a statement, Minister Young said that his story attempts to make or to misconstrue what he has said. But it doesn't, you see, because to me this all sounds way too familiar. Because I remember when this minister said that he never discussed the Rio Treaty with the US ambassador, and then the same US ambassador came out and said in an unprecedented statement that he did discuss the breaking of the Rio Treaty with the US ambassador. And this whole Rio Treaty had to deal with the Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez landing in Trinidad when the United States had sanctions on. So that's two ambassadors calling Stuart Little a liar. He has to be the clown in terms of the diplomatic community and how they see him. But will the Prime Minister fire him? I don't think so. Because I think birds of a feather flock together. And that's what we're seeing here with this Minister of National Security. How could you tell lies as it relates to diplomats and still serve in your capacity? So I always like to end this podcast on some sort of a closing or a funny way or something like that. And I think I found that whole funny way. Clarence Rambarat, who has to be, I don't know, one of the most unpopular agriculture ministers. I mean, this guy went up for a seat in Miaro, lost. Went up for a seat in Caroni Central, or one of the Caroni seats, I believe, lost there as well. I think it was Cuba Saudi. I mean, the seat that is Varanda Mohit represented right now. He lost that seat to her, and here he is now making these statements that how doubles is almost totally imported content. I mean, why would someone say something so stupid? Why? I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, but why would you make a statement like that? And why would you try to cover it up by going down the whole dietitiary road? I mean, why would you say something like that? Why would you on the health road afterwards? I mean, okay, let's just say for argument's sake, doubles is imported content, right? But so what? Should we stop buying doubles? Is that it? I mean, What are you trying to allude to? Because just like every other commodity, whether it be price smart or doubles, is a small business as well, and they do a lot of employment, and they do a lot of benefits for the economy as well. So why would you make statements like doubles is 100% not local, and or was only the condiments is local, and you're interested in supplying local? So why doubles? I mean, isn't there other food items that are not local that you could have come with? Or why even come with anything? I mean, what is the point? I just don't understand you. Clients remember you're a dummy. It's plain and simple. I mean, what I put in my refrigerator and what I put in my refrigerator, what I put in my cupboards is entirely up to me, not up to you. I don't need your opinion to tell me what I put in my fridge. I certainly don't need your opinion to tell me what to eat as well, local or international. That's my choice. That's an individual right. I think more politicians need to respect individual rights. I think if they respected more individual rights, especially as it relates to COVID-19, we won't be in the situation that we are in right now, where we shut down the entire economy and now we're feeling the repercussions of it in terms of unemployment and whatnot. I don't know. Sometimes I believe politicians, as like I said, they just lose all sense of or all common sense and just say things that makes no sense. But whatever. That's just how it is. Stay tuned, folks. Episode 23 next week.